And that's why you can't put away the shorts yet. What's going on, everybody? This is the Coverbandconfidential podcast, the podcast for cover band musicians and band leaders to learn how to rock more and suck less in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm Adam Johnson.
In Greensboro, North Carolina, I'm Dan Ray.
It's been the mid-80s all week.
Yeah, crazy.
We're leaving to go to the beach this weekend, so I mean, I guess I should probably be fine with it. But I was fully prepared to have this whole season wrapped up and put this stupid AC behind me away, but it is not. It's not happening.
You know, we keep having these massive storms that keep telling us that our expectations about weather are all wrong. So
less than optimal.
Yeah.
Well, how's it going?
It's going good. You know, I played a live acoustic corporate gig actually on Saturday afternoon. It's the one from Thumbtack.
Yes.
And it was fun. It was really fun. It was a good crowd. I was wallpaper, and I knew I would be. It was fine. But then, you know, I'm not going to tolerate a full wallpaper show. There'll be times though I will play something that will demand attention and you know, interaction with the group, and they did, and it was good. Pay was good. Host was good. It was really fun. It was actually really fun. So
great.
Yeah, good. Glad to have done it. I got a 5-star review on not TikTok, Thumbtack to me.
I don't know what TikTok is.
I don't know what TikTok, Tick, something, whatever it is. I got a 5-star review on it, so that's good. And did remember to capture video of the booker saying, "Hey, I just had Dan Ray play at my thing, and it was great." I do try to capture like a referral video that I can use later, and she was entirely happy to do that. So.
No, that's great.
Yep.
You got anything coming up?
No, still just prepping for the Halloween week shows. That's coming along. Definitely showing progress, both in terms of the prep work of the tracks. Here's what we realized: even with the cues absolutely pegged, maybe to the point of clipping some, still weren't very audible in the mix. And so I went and I EQ'd them real hard in sort of the high mid range just to make them cut. And that really actually did help a lot. So so that was something. And just continuing to add material and stuff and figuring out how the guitar part for Power of Love goes. That's a fun part to play. That's neat.
Yeah. Me and Joey play it slightly different. I'm curious which one. You're probably playing it the right way. I play it the wrong way, but I like the wrong way in contrast with the right way.
Well, the chorus is all power chords.
Yep.
And then the verse is this neat sort of C minor to F sort of. And I doubt I play it the right way because I'm actually going to an open F at the top of it because I like how full that sounds.
Okay.
But it's neat. It's a neat tune to play, and I like the way it goes back and forth between C major and C minor between the chorus and the verse. That's unusual and interesting.
Yeah, I saw a amazing video. So we all know about Drumeo, where they have the drummer who has never heard a song before and they have to play it, whatever.
Right.
Well, there's a version of that for piano, and I can't remember the name of it. Forgive me. They have pianists, keyboard players, listen to just the vocals of a song,
reharmonize
and
them,
ask them to play along. And the Power of Love version of that video is fascinating because it does have all those modulations.
Right. Yeah.
And it very rarely lines up with the actual song. And it's funny because most of these people are very talented jazz pianists, and you know, they have this very fundamental, like foundational knowledge of melody and counterpoint and all of that stuff. And then they hear just like real basic ass chords and they're like, oh, they're almost kind of disappointed.
Yeah. But if you can not be that kind of person and just appreciate that the chorus and the verse are in C major and C minor alternately, and then the bridge is in like E flat. I don't know what that is. So yeah, that's fun.
I still can't remember the chords in the
No, I need a prompter for that. It's complicated.
Every single time I'm like, crap, don't have it.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's been 10 years at this point. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
So let's see. In our world, we played a show yesterday at this big outdoor event in downtown Atlanta called West Side Stride. They took this one road, Howell Mill Road, which is basically like an artery, connects the west side of Atlanta to basically everything else. And they shut down a huge part of it. Like, it was billed as a block party, but it was not a block party. It was a blocks party. It was like, I think it was maybe 2 or 3 miles that they closed off.
Wow.
And so the idea was that they closed all the stuff down and there were vendors and stages kind of like dropped all over the area. And we were on one of the stages kind of towards the middle. And it was cool because some other bands were playing, and I got to see actually one of my other bandmates from another project who came to say, hey, and it was a lovely deal. We brought the kids, let them wander around while we were playing. The only issue is that we're that band that's totally used to four-walling our gigs. So we roll up and our sound is the sound. And this was a situation where we were patching into another system. And a couple of things have kind of exacerbated that situation. Partly, we're trying to break the rack up, and that project had started but not finished. And so some stuff had been tweaked, and it was pretty nerve-wracking. We ended up starting a couple minutes late, but it was a 30-minute turnover, so like it wasn't the end of the world. And then based on where we were, there wasn't anything around us to keep people. So we didn't play to a crowd really. People would kind of come and go, and maybe they'd hang out for a song or whatever, and then they'd just be on their way. I was thinking that we might be able to be a bit stickier than some of the other acts, but that wasn't the case. It was also hard to see us because we were under a tent, but the tent, if you walked past us and we were on the stage, you basically saw from the belt buckle down.
Not ideal.
Which is pretty odd.
Yeah.
So there were a bunch of times where Amber and I and some of the other guys hopped off of the stage and played in front. Cause we're all on wireless mics and wireless instruments. So
sure. Why not?
Tried to get the engagement up. It just wasn't there. And, sometimes gigs be like that, but the check clears and you get a really okay paid rehearsal, and you're on to rock another day.
Totally.
One other snag there was the Strat just having a lot of noise issues. And
really? Huh.
Yeah, I've got to figure it out. I changed the strings like I think like 1 or 2 gigs ago. And so I've been trying to hold out because I know that if I do this, I'm gonna have to take everything apart. But it's probably time to do that.
Yeah.
And as far as gear purchases go, that might have to wait because of some stuff that just happened that we'll talk about in a minute. So it might just be that the black Strat gets all the love for the time being until we get back around to it.
Fair.
And let's see. Next up, we've got a live band karaoke gig that's in a couple of weeks. Now, this was something where I was going to not be on the gig because we thought we had an event that was conflicting, and that changed. And I kind of left it up to the guys. It's like, hey, do you want to run point on this, or do you want us to come? And the consensus was, well, we want you there, but I still think I'm going to let them, the two that I delegated, because I've already told the client that I'm going to let them run point as far as like all the details and logistics and stuff, because that would just be the responsible thing to do and not take it away or make it look weird on the client's end. So it was a valiant effort, but didn't end up having to be the big challenge that I thought it was going to be. So
it's neat that you get to just show up and play at your own gig though. That's cool.
I still feel like I'm going to be doing some stuff. There's plenty to do.
Yeah.
This is still something that I feel like needs to happen. I need to be able to like spin this thing out. And we've tried it a couple of times. It has gone varyingly well and not well. I think it's like anything else. You have to get the reps under you.
For sure.
So I may have to engineer those opportunities just to make sure that it happens.
Yeah. Look, you have reflexes and intuitions and a whole series of structures that you have built over years about how to manage this sorts of thing. And if you're going to get, people stood up who can be delegated to, you're going to have to, put the reps in on them. That's what it's going to come down to.
So, it's a matter of time and other stuff, and we'll get there eventually, I guess.
That's good. So
let's see. Most of the other stuff we got coming up, we got a gear thing that we really got to talk about. And then I think the subject of this week is, I think it's probably good timing. I think it's definitely something that when it got brought up, the consensus was very immediate and pretty, what's the word when everybody all agrees to?
Decisive, universal.
The consensus was unanimous.
Unanimous.
That's the word I was thinking for.
There you go. Yeah.
Thinking for, man, can you tell that it's been a Monday? The words aren't wording today.
No, I can't word. Got the dumb.
Do you know who can word, though?
Who's
This
that?
week's review.
Oh, here we go.
So this one comes from Chris Braz. Now, this is interesting. This is something that came through on Spotify, and it came in about a week and a half ago. But the episode that it came in on was the musician's gift guide from last holiday season.
Huh. Okay.
It's a good reminder that, like, everybody who stumbles onto this show, they're not always coming at it from the same background or experience level. So I don't know if Chris has been catching up and he just landed on that one, or it just popped up in his feed or whatever. It was just cool to see a holiday guide come up, in the end of September.
It's pretty neat.
But he said, great episode as always. So he is a regular listener. Will be getting myself the trolley ASAP. So talking about the rock and roller cart. Adam and Dan always bring the goods to each and every episode. My band have benefited loads from the real world advice. Big thanks to Chris for the kind words.
Yeah.
And if you want to have your name or band or anything else shouted out, leave a review. That's how that happens. Okay. So this is technically part 3 of this conversation, because earlier last week, somebody in the Patreon clued us in that, like, hey, this thing that we've been talking about, this wing rack that is not officially announced, is up on Guitar Center's website. And I was like, well, that's weird. So I went ahead and made a video about it. And that video did, I think you would call well.
Mhm.
It just hit 200,000 views on Instagram. And it's over, I don't know, probably 50,000 on TikTok. I may be talking out of my face there, but a lot of people saw it and people felt varying ways about it. However,
Yeah.
no, I dealt with a lot of interesting comments, none of which were of any merit whatsoever. However, as of today, which is Monday, Behringer's officially announced all of the new Wing products. So
Yeah.
they've got a new big console, they've got a compact. They basically are taking the Wing lineup and mirroring what the X32 lineup was.
Yeah. So to back up, for anyone who's not up to speed here, what we're talking about here is digital mixers. And
Yes.
there are two sizes of ones that are consoles, with physical faders, motorized, faders. That one of which is big enough you'd put in a studio at a desk, and one of which is probably portable. I wouldn't choose to port it, but you could. And then the one that's probably most interesting to all of us is the rack version, which is certainly the spiritual successor of the Behringer X32 that you use.
Yes, which is why I was
And
very interested.
right, and I'm looking at it in comparison to the Soundcraft UI 24R that I use and love, but I'm not married to. It's a pretty darn compelling device.
Yes. And it seems like the R&D that went into this product really was paying attention to the marketplace
Mm-hmm.
and filling gaps that were very glaring, but nobody seemed to be interested in doing anything about.
Okay, so I'm coming into this on the strength of having watched one 4-minute video of a guy walking through the basics of it. So you're way deeper on the details of this thing. So lay it on me. Why might I want to move to it from my Soundcraft?
Well, let's back up a little bit. Let's talk
Okay,
about
all right.
the reason why the rack mounted mixer is such an appealing option for musicians like us.
Great.
So you kind of clued us in that the form factor is important based on the size.
Yes.
You're talking about carting things and having something that is compact. A lot of people, you talk to sound engineers and they're not wild about it because they like that tactile
Sure.
experience with the faders and the knobs and all that. And I totally understand that. The issue is that in a lot of circumstances, a full-size console is not practical. Some of the times it's not even possible, considering some of the rooms that we've played. Having a legitimate front of house position is not tenable at all.
Right.
So the prevalence of the rack mounted mixer has really blown up in the past few years, primarily for working bands and event bands and that kind of thing, where you can have a mixer on stage or near the stage that can be controlled remotely using a tablet or some other device. And for guys like us, it was just a complete game changer. It made running your own show possible, which it wasn't necessarily before.
And it's worth saying that at the entry end of the market, Behringer has owned that too with the XR series. It's been
Yep.
really easy for people to get, and with a very compact and pretty darn affordable approach. And it only has what it has in it, but it's a whole lot better than those powered mixers from PV or whatever that had 4 outs and the amp was inside the mixer, and it's just a whole big upgrade over that whole world.
Yeah, I mean, those served the purpose that they served at the time, but
Yeah.
technology has moved on. Speaking about the whole stage mixer compact and especially the X Air thing, a lot of people's gripes is that there is no physical visual readout. You can't see what's going on unless you have some sort of device.
Right.
That's a particular gripe that was addressed with this product because this one has a 10-inch touchscreen display,
Yeah.
and it's on a tilt, so you can actually pull it out and put it back. So that it's easier to see.
So the idea is, it's when it's sitting on the floor on the stage, it's looking up at you.
Right.
You can actually look down and see the screen from standing. The Q-Pack has a similar kind of physical layout that tilts the screen back like that, but not on a hinge. It's just built that way.
Yeah, it's like it's a triangle.
Yeah.
And
it's a great design.
Yeah, and I'm kind of ambivalent to it. I think it's nice to have the option, but I don't think like the X32 rack has one, but we don't really use it other than kind of quick checks of things. Like if you want to see if something's muted, you can just hit the button and twist the knob. So the touchscreen display is kind of a big selling point. The other limitations with these is typically I/O. Because of the size and the form factor. Most of them are somewhere between 8 and 16 inputs. And there are outliers. I think that PreSonus makes one that's got 32 channels.
Yeah, my Soundcraft has 24.
Yep. So Behringer coming in with the 24 combi inputs is a big win.
The thing that I've been concerned about with I/O all along, and part of why I went to the Soundcraft, is not the inputs so much as the outputs. So I need to put out in-ear mixes. I drive a sub off aux, so that's one taken up. And I'm not going to use 24 inputs almost ever, but boy, I'd really love to have like a dozen outs that really make my life good.
It's interesting because the physical outputs on the back it's 8 outputs. Now, when we saw it initially, I was a little, and I'm still not 100% clear on this, but I think that I know what's going on. There are 8 XLR outputs, and then below that there are 4 stereo headphone outs.
Right.
Now, my impression was that they were separate from the 8 outputs. I don't think that's the case necessarily, though.
Really? Okay.
I haven't had a chance to get into the actual like manual part of it, so that may not be the case. But my understanding is that the 8 outputs are the 8 outputs. And if you wanted to get additional outs, you would need some additional hardware. Now, the cool thing about that, though, is that the Wing Rack has 3 different AES outputs as well as a Stage Connect output. And depending on the way that it's configured, it can do like 300 plus inputs and 300 plus outputs.
Yeah, it's got enough channels for any possible purpose.
Yeah.
The other thing I didn't quite understand is how they're counting all those channels as stereo.
So I went through the video.
Okay.
And the thing about the Wing, it's kind of a double-edged sword because it is super flexible routing wise, but it's kind of the lack of structure. Sometimes you can have too many options. And I think that for people who are not familiar with digital mixer layouts and that kind of thing, that can get really confusing. So any channel can be mono or stereo, but the way that that's configured doesn't necessarily impact the physical ports on the back of the thing. So let's say you wanted channel 13 to be stereo. You can configure it so on the app and whatever you're using to run the mix, there's only one fader for channel 13 and it controls the left-right component of that input. But it would still require the physical inputs of channels 13 and 14.
Yeah.
And the way that you kind of have to separate that is that the ports on the back are not channel inputs, they are physical inputs.
And then we map them in a routing structure somehow. There's a grid that does all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm familiar with that from both the XR series and the Soundcraft. In both of those, there's a way to say take a pair of input channels and join them as hard panned stereo channels, and it just
Yep.
kind of links the fader, so you're moving them all at
Right.
once.
The
Um,
XRG is like that too.
yeah, so this is maybe an evolution of that concept that gives you even more flexibility.
And to me, the big win is with the Stage Connect stuff, because AES is fantastic. It is it's a pretty standardized protocol currently, but the hardware tends to be expensive. Digital snakes are anywhere from like $600 to like 20 grand.
Yeah.
Where the Stage Connect thing allows you to use it's an XLR connection, but it's more or less like a DMX cable. So it's like a high resistance
Mm.
connection. But you can do up to, I think, 32 ins, 32 outs through that one stage connection, and you can link them together.
Well, that's good. I think that one of the things about this form factor, and I'm interested in your take on it, because
Mhm.
it's the sheer it's the same as yours and not the same as mine. Inputs on the back seem really awkward to me. I mean, I've got my Soundcraft and it's a half depth unit, and I've got it
Yep.
in a full depth rack, so I got some storage space behind it. But I
Mhm.
wouldn't want to have to dig in behind there and be plugging in the dark inside the back of the rack all the time. How do you address that?
So in our situation, I've got a front panel analog split already in the rig.
Right.
So
Right.
all of our stuff is coming through that. And it serves two functions, of course, because then I can use it to fan out. We used that analog split at that gig yesterday so that we could patch into their system.
Mhm.
So there are workarounds for that kind of thing. Even if you just took the connections from the back of the rig and put them with like Neutrik connections on a panel on the back of it, that's another way that you can kind of manage that. There's a bunch of different ways to skin the cat.
Yeah.
The thing that I like the most about that, though, is with that Stage Connect option, I can now take my inputs and put them in one rack, and then I can take my outputs or my RF and I can put them in a separate rack.
Yeah.
So I can now take
With
something that
one cable going between
one
them.
cable.
Yeah, that's
You know,
beautiful.
that's the other thing, is that, before this you would have to use multi-pin or some other, physical plugs, whereas now you literally have one connection. It goes out and you plug it in, and it links up perfectly. It's an analog line level output, which is perfect for, the kind of things that we need it for. So, I was saying we were in the process of changing this build out for our racks. This kind of simplifies and complicates the situation simultaneously. The one thing that I am really excited about, though, is the number of inputs, because up till now we went from Ableton with the multiple outs, and then we realized that if we're using live drums, we can't really do that. So we went back to Band Helper with just the stereo mix. But with something like
For
this,
playback, you mean
yes,
the playback mix? Yeah.
right. So I've got that Play Audio 12, which has literally been sitting on a desk for the past year at this point. Well, now I have the physical outputs where I can literally patch it in, and it doesn't require a whole bunch of finagling to get it from the computer into the mixer, because we tried it using USB, like a direct USB connection to the laptop. We tried using the interface, and it's just like, this makes that a lot easier and a lot less complicated.
Yeah, there is also the fact of the wings being an interface. It's got,
Yep. 48
I don't
in,
even
48
know
out.
yeah, so you could probably play it off a computer direct in through that if you wanted to.
We've done that before, and it's a little squirrely because, again, you don't have the opportunity to build up any redundancy,
Mm.
where the Play Audio 12 lets you, link to Ableton installs and run them, and if one fails, it'll spill over automatically and that kind of thing. So we've done it a lot of different ways. This feels less finicky, I guess, because you
That's
got
good.
physical connections.
Yeah,
So
that's good.
taking it out of like the situation that we're in currently, like, there's also this entire new option of these really nice digital effects that are built into the wing.
Right.
So you've got, compressors and EQs and stuff that's modeled after SSLs and Neves and Pultecs and Empirical Labs. Like, you can put a distressor on anything. It has pitch correction, which you can, I mean, that's pretty rad.
Yeah.
So it's a huge jump up as far as potential sound quality.
Yes.
And we've been sitting here and we're talking about all these features and stuff. We haven't even talked about how much it costs.
That's right.
During the pandemic, pricing on everything went up, but the pricing on the Behringer stuff went up considerably. Like there was a period of time where the X32 rack cost more, like within the past 12 months, than it was when I bought it back in 2015. Now we saw this thing where like all of a sudden all the existing Behringer stuff dropped in price pretty drastically. So now the wing rack is retailing for $15.99, which, like I said, up until a couple of months ago, that was just about what the X32 rack was selling for.
Yeah.
And it's just so much more.
The Soundcraft is pulling from memory here, but something in the 1200 range. So, boy, that is a darn good price.
It's a lot of mixer for the money. And I've heard, trust me, I've heard from all kinds of people about being stoked about this. People who think that Behringer makes crap, and that's a fair critique. There have been times where
it's out of date. That critique's
have.
out of date. That critique is out of date. Behringer does not make crap anymore.
And then people saying, "Oh, well, there are better options." Like, sure, if you bought a Digico, it would sound better, but it's also not 50 grand,
Right. Yeah, I've been looking at the Q series. The Q pack looks great, or looked great until this week, and now it looks less great. I'm not really in the market to upgrade. Hadn't been. Man, this is quite a piece of kit.
And I think that I'm probably going to pull the trigger on this, if nothing else, just to pre-order one. Because if you go to Sweetwater's website and you qualify, like there's I think it's 6-month financing. It's like $260 a month. That seems like a pretty easy sell.
Yeah, it does. It does. Oh, you're making it really hard for me here.
I'm sorry. I'm not
trying. I'm really trying to resist. But I don't know that I'll be able to. The thing is, though, of course, I'm going to need, like I say, those 8 outputs aren't enough. So I'm going to need some additional hardware and then figure out how to rack all of that. And then, it just opens a whole can of worms that is, of course, it presents me a problem that I absolutely love solving. It's one of my favorite things. So I'm mad and not at the same time about it. Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
The other thing about the Sage Connect that we were talking about is that those are very affordable units. You're talking about $280 for one of those to get either 16 in, 16 outs, or 8 and 8. So
Rackable?
It's a pretty.
Would it mount in the back of the rack behind the unit?
It sure could.
All right, now you're talking.
The way that I was thinking about doing it was taking the Sage Connect from the one rack and putting it, backwards mounted onto the back of the RF rack.
Right.
And then just, patching them in from the back. So nice and clean up front. Just a single XLR connection. That's all you need.
All right. Okay. All right. We'll see. All right. We'll see.
Yep. I'm really curious how many of those end up landing in the Patreon group.
Yeah.
It's going to be a few of us.
Yeah. Might be both of us.
Yeah, for sure. Are you ready to jump into the topic du jour?
I'm too excited about this new piece of gear to talk about this topic, but okay.
Yeah, it is. This is definitely like a first to third.
Very much like a stop, change, start. Okay, Here we go. Yeah.
This is, again, I think this is super timely. We're wrapping up the year. We've got a couple of months to go. This is typically around the time where business is starting to kind of slow down a little bit, and you've been through an entire summer season where you've been balls to the wall, just busy as you can be. And this was somebody in the Patreon group just posed the question in our health category on the Slack. We guys, we talk about all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
It's not just gear stuff, but it mostly is gear stuff. Let's not kid ourselves. But this person, I'm not going to name them because I don't know who listens to whatever, but I don't want their bandmates like jumping down their throats, whatever. But the main topic is burnout. And the question goes a little something like, do you ever get burned out on being a band leader? Ever think about walking away, joining someone else's band, and just having a show up and play role? That's the kind of headspace I'm in, and I'm trying to figure out if it's really what I want to do or just a passing phase. And when I tell you, the response was immediate and unanimous. I think I was the first person to respond, and by the time I finished typing, there were at least 5 more underneath it.
Yeah, including a bunch of people who, are big inspirations for me inside that group of what it is to be a band leader, who were like, yep, constantly.
So the answer is yes.
Yes,
we all feel burned out doing this. It can be a thankless job. It can involve a lot of bull crap. It can involve, I mean, for most of us, we didn't get into, I didn't start playing guitar to answer emails about
Right.
power requirements.
Yeah, I do enough like figuring out how to quote stuff in my day gig. Like I
And then
really don't.
we do it in our free time.
Yeah, hopefully those, the skills I've honed there are of some value in this hobby thing of mine. I've said to people like I'd call it a side hustle if I ever made money at it. As it is right now, it's just a self-funding hobby. Yeah, is it worth it? I don't know. Every and I've said, and I'm quoting Dave Hamilton from Gig Gab saying
Mm-hmm.
this, that most gig days, if you called me at like 1:30 in the afternoon and said, "Hey, we're canceled," you'd be my favorite person on the planet. That'd be the best thing. Oh
Absolutely.
my God. The weather's coming in and I'm like, baby, please. But then, of course, downbeat changes everything. That
Yep.
experience of actually being there, playing it, doing the music with the people you love in front of people that are responding, like that is so juicy and so fulfilling and so much an expression of who I am. Like I wouldn't pass it up, to begin with. And then the question is, would I give up being a band leader? Would I be somebody who just shows up and plays? Yeah, I've done that. I've done that,
Mm-hmm.
and it's fine. But the problem then is when the band leader's doing things that aren't optimal, and you kind of have to sit on your hands about that. You kind of have to,
Yep.
you can give input or whatever, but it's not your call. I've been in the place where I've watched a band leader burn down goodwill with a venue. I've watched a band leader throw away marketing opportunities or collaboration opportunities that would have been really beneficial that I would have been all over if I'd been that band leader. But hey, it's not my gig, right? So I'll just be over here with my guitar. That hurts me in my heart, like in my soul, to watch that happen. And so that's why I said when I set up this project for the first time, really, that I'm going to be the band leader. I'm going to be I've said benevolent dictator, but since it seems to often fall to me to make the right call anyway, whether that's official or not, I'm just going to have it be official this time. And that's going well. I think that's going really well. The band is coalescing well around the concept. I think they feel really free to speak to me about their ideas and their input and how to do things. We've doubled up on weekly rehearsals at my bassist's suggestion. He was concerned about getting to stage November 2nd with how the trajectory of learning was going, and he was right. We needed to double up, and so we did. That kind of thing, right? But for me, the pain of sitting back and watching it done some other guy's way is bigger than the pain of doing it myself. And so I always just sort of end up taking it's my whole life. I've been like the guy who walked in front. I don't know why that is. Somehow that's just natural to me. And it's not to everybody. Some people have to get up to that, right? But yes, for every time I felt burnt out, I've looked at the alternative and been like, yeah, probably better off just stepping up.
Yeah. In my situation, it's kind of like the running joke, and everybody who's in the Patreon community knows it at this point. Is that it's the time of year when Adam starts considering selling the rig and
Yeah,
handing it to somebody else.
just hanging it up.
I think having the perspective of time does help,
Mm.
because you do understand that it is kind of cyclical, and you do go through these periods where you're just like, this is not feeding me in the way that I wanted it to. And I got into this scenario because in my original group, I was not a shot caller and saw things, like you were saying, things run the way I didn't think they should be. And then when it all went, south, being told in very blunt terms that you have no ownership of this. You contributed nothing. You were just a person. And spending 8 years of your life committed to something, missing family events and spending time with your wife and kids just
Mm.
was just, yeah. So I was like, I don't ever want to be in that situation ever again.
Yeah.
So, you have to be willing to step up and do that. And that was my response is, do you feel this way? Yes. But the alternative is you reconciling with, do you think that you would be happy or you would feel fulfilled if you weren't the person in charge? And that's really where the rubber meets the road. Because if you having a say is the thing that like you appreciate, then there's your answer.
Yeah, or if there's an artistic expression that's part of it for you, nobody else had this idea to do an 80s version of my band, and my guys wouldn't have chosen that left to their devices. And I offered it to them and they were in, and there's hardly a bigger 80s kid than me, frankly, in the world. So, you know,
Easy.
piece of cake to do that sort of. But if somebody came to me and said, "Hey, 90s pop punk," I'd have been like, "That's not my, I don't really know it." I was down a classic rock rabbit hole in the 90s. I can play every note of Pink Floyd, but I kind of missed Nirvana.
Yeah.
So if there's an expression of music that you love, that you are the champion for in your group, that without you championing it, it wouldn't be happening. That's another aspect of it, that your own personal expression is your own, and as a band leader, you get to marshal your forces and get the band in line for that, and find the people who are going to be, or be the voice for it that people can coalesce around. And that's the other part of it. It's not just the work and the tactical sort of how to market, how to communicate, how to have relationships, but also the artistic vision that often comes directly from the band leader. That's part of what I'm enjoying about this change. Even before focusing on 80s for this thing, my vibe has always been really eclectic. Like, I'll throw
Mhm.
a early 60s tune next to something on the radio now and really just blow people's mind with the juxtaposition. I've done that acoustic and in every band I've been in. And that's an expression that I wouldn't get to have if I was the guitar player in somebody else's band.
Or you could spend all of that energy trying to like talk people into it.
Well, and I've done that, and it wasn't appreciated, and it
Yeah.
caused nothing but friction,
Yeah, it's a real
and I
pain.
and I had to like apologize and back out, because this isn't my band. And for somebody who leadership is somehow sort of a natural expression for me, a side player in somebody else's band was really hard. Like, I really had to suppress some things, and at some point that became intolerable. I just became unwilling to do it.
Well, and I think there's also a component of the grass is always greener
Sure,
in a different situation.
sure, sure.
Because if you yeah, on paper, if you were like, "Okay, you're gonna get paid this much, and all you gotta do is show up and do the thing." Right now, in contrast to what I'm currently doing, sign me up.
Sounds great. Let's go.
Is there paperwork? What do I need to
Yeah,
do?
yeah. Whose hand do I shake? Let's do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, I think that at some point that would get old, and there would be, like you said, something would come up and you would want to say something, you would want to do something, and it's not your place. And so you have to find a way to reconcile yeah, this is a lot more work, but I get to be the person that casts the vision for this project. And its success is testament to the hard work that I have done, as well as the contribution of the people on my team. And it it does challenge you. It challenges you to be a people leader, to be a business person, be a creative influence, to be a marketing, like, there it challenges me in ways that nothing else has
Right.
and may never.
The one comparison that I think I can see is like a startup founder.
Yeah. Well,
Es-
we are a small
Essentially, we
business.
are, right?
Yeah.
So, and you got to be everything. You got to be the marketing. You got to be the vision. You got to be the technical. You got to be the HR. You got to be everything. And I think it's worth saying, like, just because you and I are both, well, you've said sometimes,
Neurotic.
yeah, well, yeah, that you've said sometimes before, like, if you could be anything other than a musician, you should do that. Like, but if you can't, if that's the only thing you can imagine yourself being, then freaking go, right?
Yep.
It's kind of like that. Not everybody has to have this pull to be the one at the heart of it and making the decisions and driving it. But boy, if that's if that's you, then there's no denying that that's you.
Yeah.
You be true to that, and don't pretend that it could be any other way. I've been in 3 bands now where I pretended it could be some other way for me, and on to a greater or lesser degree, it sucked. And I'm done pretending about that. I'm a
Mhm.
band leader, and I'm going to be. And if you're going to be in a project with me, I will listen to you. Like I say, benevolent dictator, 100%. But when it comes down to who owns the PA, who's driving the sound, until I can find someone to delegate to that to, like who's primarily driving relationships with venues. It's gonna be me. I totally want input from the band. I want their participation. If somebody wants to step up and be like, no, I'll be the booker, cool,
Yeah.
go, right, God bless. But in the absence of that, count on me, because I'm there. I will be that.
Yeah.
If you are capable of sitting back in a band and not doing that, I recommend it. Life will be easy for you. But if you're like Adam and me, where that's just not how we're built, you got to own it. You got to step into it. You got to acknowledge it, and you got to not pretend it's some other way for you.
And all right, let's do self-awareness session time here.
Okay.
I am easily the most difficult person to deal with in my group. And so being the person in charge means that people just have to put up with you.
Well, yeah.
I mean, they don't have to, but if they want if they want to play the gig and get the check from doing this in this band, I am the person that they have to, tolerate the most, I suppose.
Yeah.
Cuz I mean, when I get stressed, I'm not at my best, and the guys in my group see that more than I care to admit,
Yeah.
but
Well,
it's
that's the thing. That's part of leadership too. Is you don't have to be, how do you say it? Like, you're still a human, and you're still going through what you're going through, and you get to use that as part of what connects you with them. And so, I don't know. I think if you asked your guys, they'd say, yeah, there are moments when Adam's clearly going through something, but that doesn't make it not worth being on his team. Or, I mean, you shared a couple of stories in our whole time together, like literally a couple, where your frustration with them came out in ways they saw.
yeah.
Like a couple out of all the years we've talked. And your tendency is to turn it on yourself, not on other people. You're going to be harder on yourself than them. And I think that's easier to be with than you think.
The thing for me is when I get flustered, I can't internalize that,
Hmm.
because I feel like I'm at a level of anxiety just in general that when it just hits a certain tipping point, there's just I I have no poker face. I just can't. I can't fake it. I can't fake anything. It's really not great for me
Hmm.
or the people around me when things are not going well. But those moments are fleeting, and you can usually recover as long as you don't do or say or think anything that can't be taken back.
Yeah, and it's hard to even think of something that couldn't be taken. You can always. I just always sort of stand that you can always work anything out in
Yeah.
communication. It's not, very little is actually unforgivable.
So I think this is a really very specific question for a very specific group of people, but I think
Yeah.
it's important to talk about because playing music is hard. And
Yeah.
even if you're just doing it as a hobby, even if you're not the person in charge, there are still situations that are stressful, and you can find yourself in a situation like, why am I doing, like, I don't have to do this.
Yeah. I didn't sign on for
Why am I
this.
doing it?
Yeah. Yeah.
But the answer typically is there's something in you that can only be expressed a certain way, and this is the way that works the best for us. And if you want to do it and you want to be successful at it, you're just going to have to understand that it's just not always going to be a walk in the park. And
Yeah.
here's the thing, we talk about is like, oh, we're struggling or we're not successful, da 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 da. All you have to do is read any musician book or movie. Like, they hate it. They hate it
Yeah. Yep.
so much. There's
Yep.
so much about stuff they don't enjoy. It's just like anything else. It's a job. And even if it's a fun job, a job's a job. And there's always going to be parts of a job that you just are not going to be into.
Yep.
Period. Doesn't matter what you do. I can't I can think of some things, but I'm not going to say I'm on this because I'm trying to, keep it clean for the ratings
Yeah.
purposes. But there's just going to be stuff that you're going to have to put up with, and there's no changing it. So if you can push through those times, it does go, it passes.
Yeah.
It is temporary. It is fleeting. Every time that I have thought about selling the gear, I have not sold the gear. I still have all the gear.
Yep.
I understand that at some point there will be a time where it's like, okay, it's time to hang it up. But right now, like, even when things are stressful, there are still moments where it's fun. Like at this gig yesterday, we had a really stressful setup and had some technical issues, and we're playing in a weird setup where people weren't paying attention. Amber and I just stood on stage and pointed at dogs. There was a dog walked by that was wearing boots, and we were like, look at that dog, he's wearing boots.
It's good.
It was still fun. And then we went out, we had dinner with the band and our boys, and it was a good hang, and everybody hugged when we left, and it was great.
Yeah.
You got to get through the crappy parts to get to the good parts.
Totally.
And you never get there if you don't stick it out.
There you go.
I think it's a good one to wrap it up on.
I think so too. Some of our episodes are really well plotted out and designed and it's structured well, and others, like, we go deep on stuff and we find things we didn't know were there. I like both kinds. I like both kinds.
This one is a little meandering, but we'll cut it all down. That's
no, but it was a deep conversation that we found some truth in, and I really, we couldn't have done that if it was too structured. So yeah, I'm happy about it.
I do want to thank our person who will remain unnamed for asking the question, because I think it probably took some guts to even just externalize that feeling. I know that I've definitely felt the pressure to not say it out loud, but the community aspect of this group makes it very safe to say those things and be just brutally honest about stuff when things aren't going the right way.
Yeah, and you're in a like literally a dozen people jumped in like, yup. Like totally validating that experience and not having
there was not one dissenting opinion.
Yeah, nobody was like, "Oh no, you can't think that. That's bad." Like, not a hint of that. So, if you want to be in a community of people who have totally been where you are and empathize and can relate totally, man, $5 a month.
Yeah,
oof, hard to beat.
Easy sell. Well, I guess we'll just wrap it up on that. I won't even ask you for parting words because I think we said all we needed to say.
There you go. Let's do it.
Folks, thanks so much for tuning in. We appreciate each and every one of you. If you want to support the show, you can do any things you're about to hear. But I'll go ahead and call it for this week. In Atlanta, Georgia, I'm Adam Johnson.
In Greensboro, North Carolina, I'm Dan Ray.
You've been listening to the Coverbandconfidential podcast for the week of October 11th, 2024.